Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me once again, Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cameron?
Hey, what's going on?
What's going on is today you have just finished Spider-Man 2, so we're going to go full on into kind of our spoiler cast for the game. We'll do, I gave my impressions kind of last week, but we'll start with like spoiler-free thoughts from you now that you've had a chance to dive in, and then we'll kind of do full spoilers. And I've got here my big 19 inches of Venom, which is too big to go on any shelf behind me, so it's just going to make a little cameo here at the beginning of the episode for the video version, and then I'm going to set it down at my feet over here. So Cam,
it's too big to fit.
Yes, it is. It's too big to fit anywhere. There's just too much. I can't handle 19 inches of Venom. Yeah. Anyway.
Thank you for.
You're welcome. If you like what you hear, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast everywhere you can. All that fun stuff. So, Cam, first things first, spoiler free. What did you think of Marvel's Spider-Man 2?
Phenomenal video game.
Excellent.
Absolutely phenomenal video game. It is every way possibly better than Spider-Man 1. I think that it does everything better from story to gameplay to combat to everything. Top to bottom, a very much of an improvement over the original Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Any non-spoilery things you want to kind of speak about first, or do you want to just dive full on into spoilers?
The only thing I would say is this game, I think this game is definitely part of, if you were to like put a Criterion collection together for like the must play Sony games.
Mm-hmm.
I think Spider-Man, Miles Morales, and Spider-Man 2 as a like pseudo trilogy. I guess you could call Miles Morales kind of like
trilogy.
Yeah. I guess you could call it like a 1.5 Miles Morales.
In not going into spoilers or anything like that, but on the kind of funny spoiler cast for Spider-Man 2, Brian Intihar rejoined the crew as he did for Spider-Man 1, and he, like, Tim at one point asks him, so how do you define Spider-Man, like Miles Morales? What do you think of that? And he basically said, it's Spider-Man 2.
There you go.
So yeah, like, naming wise and convention wise, like, this is the third game in the Insomniac Spider-Man trilogy of games. Yes. Much like, Kingdom Hearts did the whole wild thing, and then you get to Kingdom Hearts 3, and it's not really the third game. I'm sure when an inevitable Spider-Man 3 comes out, it'll still be, Miles Morales will have still been the second game in the series.
Yeah. I think these three games are fantastic. They're an absolute must-plays. I binged through Miles Morales right before hopping into Spider-Man 2. We talked about that last week, and mm-hmm. I continue to be blown away by the interpretation of the Spider-Man mythos that Insomniac does, this fresh spin they put on everything, and the commitment they have. I think one of my biggest issues with Marvel as a comic book corporation is their in comparison to the DCs on the editorial side, is their unwillingness to commit to permanence or real significant change. Identities might switch up. People might kind of do a few things here or there, but they'll always come back to the tried and true thing, because Marvel has a fear, like industry-wise, has a fear of upsetting the status quo for new readers. They have a very deep concern over that.
I mean, I don't understand. I don't get your, like, oh, Marvel has this fear, but DC doesn't. I don't follow on that at all. But
that's fair. For like,
there was a whole New 52. They made a big old thing stink about it.
Yeah, no. The whole thing about the New 52 was that was a reset button, because they had like 40 plus years of continuity that they were still following and still loyal to, and a timeline that they were consistent with.
Sure.
So for long time
continuity, even though like Superman's powers changed over that 40 years all the time,
sure,
and all that stuff. Like continuity is a whole thing in comics. I don't. As an outsider, at least, I don't see DC and Marvel being too disparate in this kind of realm of, like, they reset some things. They changed some things to make things a little bit more, fitting of the times and all that stuff.
Yeah, there's a deeper discussion we could go into that you have zero interest in, so I won't bore you with it.
Yeah.
But there is a like for me, there's always been a distinction of like the question of like there is a status. Marvel abides by a status quo where prior to the New 52, I would say DC is about legacy. However, post New 52, that's completely out the window.
I mean, doesn't the whole Miles Morales character throw kind of a wrench in that argument,
No,
though?
because Mal up until
I mean, like, sure, they still play with like different universes in the Marvel
sure.
multiverse of things, but like Miles was a very specific, hey, this is a not Peter Parker Spider-Man, and we're going to continue moving forward with this character in this story.
The thing is, so there's two parts of that. One, yes, it was massive, and that's why one of the reasons why Miles Morales was a breakthrough character, not just because of like representation and a lot of things like that, but because it was distinctly this is not going to be a Peter Parker or a type of Peter Parker character. This is a brand new character. That is one part of it, and two, the second part is because the way they were allowed to do that is because it was contained to the Ultimate Spider-Man line slash Ultimate Universe, like that multiverse aspect of it. That in particular, that's why that was allowed to happen. There's no way that Marvel as a company would have let them do that without. And here's the thing: Miles Morales changed Marvel in that aspect, where you could do bigger things like that outside of the main Marvel universe. And then even now, I think today, in a much more modern sense, they are playing around with a lot more. There's no permanence when it comes to like identities, especially when it comes to Spider-Man and symbiotes. Like identities are swapping back and forth all the time. Anti-venom, venom, all sorts of stuff that happens with it. Like right now, like I think Venom is even held by a character that was like created in the last decade. So Miles Morales changed a lot, but I would say, and this is what I'm saying is like pre New 52, pre this era where there was kind of like a general industry reset. There was a definitive version of that. But back to my point being back to the original point. Sorry, I really enjoy the commitment that Insomniac is making for these Spider-Man games, and I'm really very much into, especially in this game, Spider-Man 2, the decisions they make with certain characters that are definitive. And I like that a lot. So that's my last spoiler-free thing that I'll say. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I guess since I did finish the game in between when I talked about it last week, I mean, I don't think my thoughts on the game changed all that much. I very much also really enjoyed the game, and I mean, yeah, start to finish, I played the thing basically over 3 days or like 3.5 days and knocked the thing out. So yeah, ton of fun. One of my little gripes was I probably liked the like world building and like all of the like I liked the backpacks of the first game that had little
Absolutely.
Easter eggs to what Peter's like 7 years as Spider-Man had been thus far. This game, the dives it does into kind of its history and stuff are certainly deeper and probably more more impactful overall. But I did miss that like little bit of kind of world building that the first game had.
Yeah.
There are some collectibles that we'll talk about in spoiler stuff that like are kind of serving as a like backpack replacement, but they don't have that history built into
Absolutely
them
not.
and stuff
No.
like that.
Yeah.
So that's an element that I found I was missing in this game. But overall, it's still like a ton of fun. I think one of the big things that like this very much has felt like okay. They did a whole bunch with 2018 Spider-Man, and then they kind of learned some lessons from that, and pared some things down for Miles Morales and made a more streamlined story. And I think this kind of is like the best of both worlds. It's a more streamlined story, but it also has more to do. And I think most notably, like the side quests and stuff like that aren't just okay, go do this mission. There are a few of those,
Yeah.
but like even those like one-off side quests are doing something. They're playing some kind of role in your time as Spider-Man. And for the longer side quests that kind of span either, multiple collectibles, like I think they did a great job of kind of still, it's not just go and collect these 12 things. It's okay, you've collected 3 of these things. Here's a little bit of story, and we're going to give you a little bit of forward momentum on like what's going on with these collectibles. And then you kind of get, there's 25%, 50%, 75%, and then 100%, and then like a kind of epilogue for each of the major kind of collectibles and side quests that I really liked and had a good time with. There were a few a few things that I found myself missing maybe a little bit in terms of like, maybe they weren't for everybody, but like I really liked some of the bases that you could kind of do, and then if you really wanted to, you could like go and replay them and try and get like a higher score, or kind of like, can I take out all these enemies in one single combination or something like that, or can I do this whole thing in pure stealth? And like they didn't include that much in the way of replayability in the bases of this game, so I missed that a little bit, but maybe that'll be something that they put in later. I know they're already doing a new game plus, and then a very like small minor quality of life thing that I admit that this one I was surprised was like a step back from Miles Morales. This one brings back the podcasts of J. Jonah Jameson and the Danicast and stuff like that from the last couple games. And I don't know how many times one of those would start playing while I was like swinging into like the checkpoint, and then it just got cut off. And in the last games, I would like it would basically log it as, okay, you've triggered this thing. Now you can go to somewhere in the menu and basically like you can just play it from there. Couldn't find it in this one, so I missed that.
It's not here.
I was sad that like maybe that's something, again, they'll like patch that in later or something like that. But there were definitely like a handful of those where I was like, I'm curious what J. Jonah Jameson was going to say about that thing, but oh well.
I did find myself circling around like mission points to make sure that I didn't miss anything.
Yeah. All right. Well, then let's dive into full spoilers here. And Cam, so yeah, I'm good. This is your last chance. Go ahead, duck away. We'll be back next week. I'll have thoughts on Sea of Stars because I finished that as well. But we're gonna do a whole this is going to be Marvel's Spider-Man 2. So this is your chance to duck away. But yeah, Cam, you just finished it, so I want to kind of let you take point on like what's the thing you want to talk about.
Let's talk about. There's 2 things I want to talk about. One, let's talk about character death permanence, which we get from, at least as far as what I mentioned earlier when I said the commitments they make for characters. Mm-hmm. The Sinister Six are basically dead.
I mean, but yeah, most of them. You like from the first game, Shocker's dead, Vulture's dead, Scorpion's dead. Rhino isn't in this game.
He shows up once in the Mr. Negative. Miles and Mr. Negative go through Peter's mind.
Yeah.
He shows up briefly.
Yeah.
But that's it.
People have found in kind of like, glitched parts of the map and stuff like that. They've found, as I was telling you, they've found a Kraven trophy room that full on has Rhino's head mounted on a wall. So the implication is he's probably also dead. But yeah, but of the Sinister Six from last game, Martin Lee and Doc Ock are the only ones still that survived Kraven unscathed.
Yeah.
So yeah, the like, and I love how that's kind of introduced. Like it's and really the only like in your face bit of it is the like seeing the footage of him killing Scorpion.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it's entirely possible to miss, and I think you maybe did miss like the Shocker.
I missed the Shocker one. I ended up finding the Shocker later in when Miles breaks out of his cell.
Yeah, you can see like
I saw the
Herman deceased or whatever.
Yeah, I saw those were deceased there.
Yeah.
But I did find, like, as Mary Jane Watson, MJ, just showing up, like, slinking through a back room.
Yeah.
And finding, like, the vulture's wings just there. And, like, what happened to the vulture? And then plays the recording, and it's just, like, was able to get through, not a problem, disappointed.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, he's dead.
Yeah. Yep. The shocker one is in that same sequence where you're playing as MJ, and it's that bit where, like, okay, you've got to go get a code and you got to get a key, and there's like one little encampment there, kind of in that path, and it's a little bit maybe out of the, like, if you are just going straight towards, the objective point for the code or something like that, you might miss it, and it's probably what happened here. But yeah, it's basically just in a camp somewhere under like a tent. You'll see like Shocker's stuff, and it's got like the little, triangle prompt to interact with it, and she'll kind of see that, she'll see that same like Herman deceased, kind of thing that you later saw as Miles. Definitely does a good job of establishing Craven as a viable threat. Mm-hmm. And I definitely kind of found myself thinking like, oh, that's sad, but at the same time, yeah, they probably weren't going to do much more with those characters. They used them in the first game and didn't really need to revisit them, so they can go ahead and knock those guys off of the let's use these characters list.
I think so that's one thing. I really love that sets up Craven as a credible threat. I love that it sets up Craven as like, Craven's here to do or die. And that's what he's all about.
Yeah.
And
like, it even goes back to the kind of in that opening that took place 6 months prior kind of thing. Like, he's out there for the hunt, and he's seeing all these names pop up of people he's going to hunt in New York City. And he certainly picked them off and there were the other ones that he tried to pick off, like Tombstone or Black Cat, that, Miles and Peter kind of interjected and saved the day on, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I thought that was awesome. And the second thing I want to talk about is they teased at the end of Spider-Man 1, and they fully fulfill that promise that they gave us with that tease, which is Harry Osborn is Venom. Mm-hmm. I love the aspect of bringing the Agent Venom armor for Harry as kind of like his superhero persona, and then that all, saving Peter with the symbiote, and then all the trauma that comes out from following that, leading up to, it's like, okay, I'm like, this is where they're going to make me cry, the same way they made me cry when May Parker died in the first game, Aunt May. And they're like, no, but instead it's going to be way worse, because it turns out Norman Osborn's just gone crazy cuckoo bananas. And it's awesome. The choice of making Harry Venom, but not making Harry villainous as Venom initially. Mm-hmm. What a great way of staggering out that kind of decline. It isn't until Harry's back on his deathbed. He's not mentally or physically strong at this point. And so when the symbiote gets back attached to him, he doesn't have like the 2 or 3 years in the tank where he's been adapting to it and he's surviving off of it. It's back, and then we get the big old Venom. Mm-hmm. Also great moment of
he's been going through withdrawals.
Yeah.
Like, we're not seeing him kind of make that withdrawal journey, but the few times like we check back in on him as Peter is getting more and more like, I can't give the suit back to Harry, I do so much more good with it, and like we see him going further and further down the bad spiral. Like, when we do check in on like every time we check in on Harry, he's in a worse condition. First he's got the cane, then he's like furious and smashes the window with the cane, and then he's he's like leaving Peter like a resigned to his death kind of like message, with the
EMF thing. Yeah, the EMF thing. Hey, I realize in a week I could be dead. Mm-hmm. So let me set you up on like let me set you up with this last mission. And that's before like the stark decline that leads to him having like sunken eyes and like the palest skin. I'm like, great job creating two separate Harry models, one of which is like the palest of pale characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like when he's two shades paler than Tombstone, like it's brutal, and like you see it, and gosh, it's so good. And I love how Peter's like, no, your dad's worked on a cure. And in the back of our heads, we're all like, that's not going to work though, Peter, because that's the goblin serum. It's not going to work.
And that's the thing is like, we know that, and Peter knows that too, but Peter's been corrupted by the symbiote. So that's what he's saying. That's how he's justifying that he doesn't need to give Harry
I'm also referring to afterwards when he has it in the vial. And he says, your dad's going to work on it. Like, your dad's got another cure. And it's just like, it's also that Peter also living in denial. Yeah. Because he can't, like, we saw it. But Aunt May dying broke him tremendously.
But I think we also, it's also, and at least what the game kind of shows us later is like, oh, not, like, there's still a part of the symbiote in him. Oh, yeah. So, like, there's still... Like it's him going through withdrawals. It's him basically like in denial and also continuing that like myth that he had started while full symbiote of like Norman will be able to fix this. He's a smart guy.
Even though it's always Mr. Osborn, never Dr. Osborn, because he's not a doctor.
Yeah.
Fucking love that. I love that. It's just like, I'm like, every time somebody calls him Mr. Osborn, it's like, isn't that kind of like a dig? Like this guy's this like. But he's the businessman.
He's a billionaire CEO. I don't think he cares. But also shout out to the sequence where you are as Harry playing as the Venom.
It's so good. Yeah. It's so good.
It's giving you like it's giving you that like I talked about in our spoiler free stuff last week. Admittedly, because I hadn't gotten to this Venom stuff, but like I talked about. Peter in the symbiote suit, I was playing it more aggressive and being more brutal and stuff like that, and then like when they let me be full Venom, I was like, yeah, all of the you're gonna throw a whole bunch of nameless Oscorp security at me, they're all dead. I will throw them off whatever I can.
The fact that you're R1 so instead of webbing people, you grab them and then you have them and then you swing them around. So you're literally taking one guy and you're hitting a bunch of other guys with them as a weapon. One of my favorite things to ever do in a video game, and they gave it to me in spades. I could just keep on doing it over and over again. Also, catching missiles, throwing them back. And then you get to the creme de la creme, which is the Kraven fight as Venom is awesome. Because man, oh man, is Kraven so much less intimidating than even when you're playing as Peter in the symbiote suit. Like, Venom is so strong and so powerful that he makes easy work out of Kraven, and it's great.
Yeah, Insomniac does a great job there of like establishing the hierarchy of threats. Like Kraven has been this threat the entire game, and like we the audience and we the player who has any kind of semblance of knowing who Venom is knows that Venom's a deeper, darker threat that's kind of lurking there under the surface. But when it is Kraven almost kills Peter, and it's only through the symbiote that Peter survives, kind of thing. So Kraven immediately established there, as obviously he's already also had hunters wreaking havoc throughout the city for a while. So clearly already been a threat, but like on a personal level, he is an imposition on Peter. And so then the like giving you the reins to play as Venom is the only way that that the Kraven storyline was going to end, really, because like Peter established maybe Peter and Miles would have been able to knock out Kraven or something, but like Kraven was fighting to the death. There was no going in quietly. There was no like none of that was going to happen.
There was no he's going to the raft. None of that. No.
So he had to die, and giving you the reins as Venom to do that was like the fitting arc for that character over the course of the campaign.
Such a great moment. I also massive shout out to Kraven, the Kraven bases where they're like, Kraven's family is going to come to New York. And you're like, okay, that'll probably be, in my head, I'm like, that's probably going to be like post-game stuff maybe, or maybe it's a DLC. And they're like, juked, faked out. Nope. Craven's family is dead because he pitted all of his children against each other.
Mm-hmm.
One of his kids killed not only their other siblings, but also her mother. And then he says, great, now let's see if you can survive. And then he blows her up.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell?
He's very much, you can't take it with you.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, as it
what a way to phrase
like,
that, Trevor. What an extent of, like, to the extreme, you can't take it with you.
Well, I mean, like, there's, like, I love that, like, one of the first audio logs you get there is, like, a son angry that that he's, like, taking all of their inheritance and pouring all of this money into this wild hunt that he's doing, and going to New York, and all the resources that he has put into New York City, basically, is like, oh yeah, there's not going to be any Kravinoff money after this. Like, he's put everything into this, so his kids aren't fighting over anything unless they can, like, kill Craven and put a stop to it themselves.
Well, I think that was the whole thing, is like the daughter Anna was just like, I'm actually, like, I'm gonna kill you and then I'm gonna take over your hunt.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So she'll show up, and then it's like, no, he literally blows her up because fuck her. Like, fuck you. You're not taking my hunt away from me. Like, what
You're not worthy of the hunt.
Yeah, what awfulness is that? Like, such awfulness. And then at the very end, it's like, oh, I guess we didn't have to take out these bases other than the fact that, like, we took them out. Because turns out the kids weren't ever coming.
Yeah. I mean, it's still, like, it's still also good to eliminate that hunter threat from New York City. But
absolutely,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
so good.
And that's one of those, like, yeah, I love that the bases had a story to them as you're going through. One of the other ones we talked about is, like, all the flame stuff, culminating, like, the flame stuff in particular being, like, an interesting, okay, this is picking up where Yuri was left off, following the City That Never Sleeps DLC from the first game.
Hammerhead DLC,
yeah, where she basically, like, turned full vigilante and basically was in the wind at the end of that DLC. So for her to pop back up here as Wraith, going vigilante, like, still aligned with Peter, but, like, with way less qualms about killing and stuff like that.
She may not kill somebody, but she doesn't have to save them either.
Yeah. She's very much pulling Christian Bale Batman.
Yeah. Unless it comes to fucking the Flame himself, which just, like, she's ready to murder that guy.
Yeah. I loved getting, like, I loved, like, her, like, once you start doing that stuff, I loved her starting to pop up at some of the crimes and stuff with you, much like Miles does, or if you're playing as Miles, much like Peter does.
Or sometimes Harry would stop by during that
little brief window where Harry is a superhero.
I'm not going to lie, I was kind of wishing at the end of the game that we would end up back at that status quo of, like, everybody can hop in. What a great time.
Mm-hmm. No, not quite.
Nope.
But yes, lots of good stuff there, and that was just a fun little element of, like, her storyline kind of being like, okay, I'm in between hunting down flame people, she'll join you for a random fight. But I also liked that culminating in the tease for Spider-Man 3 with the reveal of Carnage. And especially because it was like that's a fun, and I love the dialogue you get kind of after that quest, after he said his Carnage line, he's gotten away and stuff.
You're like, Carnage, really? And then they
when she's like, I'm gonna look through his other aliases, blah 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 blah, Cletus Cassidy, blah blah blah. It's like,
I marked out so hard when I saw that. I was like, oh my! So it is Cletus Cassidy. I loved his burn marks, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, his burn marks on his arms were so good.
Yeah.
Loved it. I just loved it. I love the idea. It's like, he's not just going to be a serial killer or a mass murderer. He's a cult leader. He's a manipulator. He's a true, like, in the blue sociopath when it comes to, like, what they're doing with it. And I'm loving it. I'm loving this. Once again, their interpretations of characters, what they're introducing us with it. Why introduce us to Eddie Brock? Eddie Brock is just another, like, reporter who, either, depending on if you want him to be more villainous, he deliberately plagiarizes or does something wrong, like in a la Spider-Man 3, or inadvertently it's like a cover-up of something he reported on, that was, like, corruption or whatever was covered up, and then he, like, lost all of his credibility because of it. a lot like the comics and stuff. So like there's a lot about that you could do with Eddie Brock, but it's always so like it only goes so deep.
I mean, at the end of the day, Venom is a cool suit and like pure id and like aggression.
Yeah.
He's like, for me, and I think we talked about this like back when we did our Spider-Man 3 Disney Plus show. Like he's never an interesting character, or a vehicle for an interesting character.
I think
this is maybe, you know, the closest I've gotten in terms of like but like at the end of the day, this is all I need from a Venom game. Like the little bit we get in this, I don't need a full version of that. I don't need a Miles Morales sized story around that. I don't need, like, even the fact that this when I talked about last week, like not getting to the lizard sequence until like, you know, or I was just about at the lizard sequence. I looked kind of at my game percentage after the fact. It was like 68%. So like you get to the Venom stuff so late in this game, because that's, you know, very much the beginning of the Venom stuff. Really, he'd been, you know, introduced as kind of connected to Harry already, but like you playing as Venom starts so late in this game that it feels like one of those like, oh, they didn't have enough Venom for a full game, so they put a whole bunch of Kraven in here for like the first act to set up a threat that Venom can then come in and take out, and then you now need to take out Venom.
I think that was just the best way to do it. But my thing is like Eddie Brock as a character is not that interesting, but making Harry Osborn Venom brings in a better dynamic to it, where it does play off the like the inversion. Like Harry is the inversion of Peter. He's wealthy. He is not as smart, but he's clever. Yeah. He's socially competent. Like there's a lot that Harry Osborn is as a character that is a good foil to Harry, and then him also being Venom is a good foil to Spider-Man. Yeah, in that same aspect to it. So.
I mean that all depends on the relationship that you're setting up with Harry and Peter. Like the fact that they're friends in this one through and through, and there isn't like any kind of like animosity or disdain towards Peter compared to like, you know, the Raimi version and the Amazing Spider-Man versions in live action stuff. Like they are just friends, and we get to see kind of like, we got that told through like the environmental voiceover things in the first game, but we didn't, obviously Harry was in a tank the entirety of the first game, so we didn't really get to see them interact. So having that bit kind of that flashback to them, you know, prowling around the high school shortly after Peter has gotten his powers and the night that Harry's mom dies, does a great job of cementing that friend/brotherly relationship in this game.
And it also, once again, I think brings out a better side of Norman Osborn as a character, because Norman Osborn in this game is just involved in a lawsuit and stuff regarding Demon's Breath. He's not like arrested or anything. He's not a criminal.
Yeah, he's one of the Danicasts at some point is very much like, well, they're prolonging discovery once again, and so the trial is just kind of continued to be kicked down the road.
Yeah, well, great. Once again, great environmental storytelling with the Danica podcast. Like, why is Norman Osborn in prison? Well, this is why. So there's that, and then on the flip side of that, also you get to see him just be a very concerned father, but also once again we get to see how much he loves and cares about Peter. That Peter is he tells Peter at one point in the game, like he's so grateful for Harry and Peter's friendships with each other, to the point where he views Peter as a son. And it's done so well in showing this different side of Norman Osborn that we didn't see in Spider-Man 1, that it is like there's more depth to this character overall. And that's something I really enjoy. It's something that I thought was really good and plays into what we're going to see in the third game. The fourth game, technically.
Spider-Man 3.
Spider-Man 3. Yeah. I think that I'm very excited to see where this goes forward with that. But I think the dynamic of choosing to make Harry Venom is such a brilliant choice. Insomniac, just absolute props for that. Because there's like, it's so there. Like, it's just like, it's there. And it makes sense.
I mean, that again, that's the thing with Venom is like the symbiote can go to anybody. So yeah, if you're not going to have Harry be a Green Goblin,
Have him be
or
Venom.
have
Yeah.
him be a Green Goblin until later, yeah, like setting him up like they did at the end of the first game as like, okay, yeah, it's pretty clear he's going to become Venom. Um, but yeah, I think the slow burn on it in this game was a solid choice,
Hmm.
and they because they did the legwork in that first act to reintroduce him into Peter and MJ's life, um, reestablish that friendship, like establish, pull Peter who has just gotten fired on his first day as a teacher. He gets a job opportunity from a startup that turns out to be this crazy rich trust fund startup thing.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think the relationship between those two characters sells everything so that when they do start getting torn apart by the symbiote in various fashions, I think.
Well, I think it's also that the symbiote first brings them closer together.
Yeah, sure.
Because all of a sudden Harry saves Peter when he's in danger while he's
I
trying
mean,
to rescue
the
people.
symbiote, like from the jump, pulling Harry to a point that he can be out and about and is cured from whatever ailment he had. Yeah.
Yeah, so like the entire point of like, oh yeah, no, the symbiote is like whatever they did to prep Harry's body and have Harry's body treated over those 2 or 3 years for the symbiote to bond with him well enough that it's not like taking over his body is fantastic. But it just we get to see what the symbiote looks like if it's not in a proper containment, where it's not being like applied to it like scientifically.
Yeah.
But I think that it's awesome though that like first we get to see the symbiote be like this force of good that we see through Harry. It not only is it keeping Harry alive, but it also Harry is able to join Peter. Like they reveal the identity, they test out the Sorry, I'm just remembering the part where Norman Osborn walks into their post-Venom experiment office and it's trashed the fuck up.
Yeah.
And he's just like, what the hell have you guys done? Like,
yeah, it's like there's no way to explain that. Like that's like unless you guys just were running around throwing chairs at walls. Like that was a terrible, terrible plan to test being Venom in your completely glass enclosed office.
So good though. It was such great moments. Like there's so many.
But it's okay. We got pizza.
Yeah, it's so much fun. It really adds to like, oh hey, wait, we both have superpowers. Like, oh Harry, I'm thinking like we get Harry.
Yeah, I will say like the like when Peter shows up like after Harry has saved Peter and then Peter is there with the mask. I loved that like he immediately recognizes Peter's voice and there wasn't like this like oh I don't know who that is kind of thing. It was so yeah the as you would when this person very very well.
It's literally your best friend from childhood. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's that moment where that happens and then it just leads into like and then he joins them on the Tombstone rescue.
Yeah.
But does that kind of leaves Miles feeling a little bit on the outs. But what does Miles do? He kind of like reinvests his time into being the Spider-Man of his community. And we get those awesome side stories to it. I think that I heard other people in like spoiler-free versions of reviews saying it feels like there's not enough tying them together in their stories. Where Miles feels like an equal instead of just a sidekick. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I do. I can see why you might have that opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think from the story stuff, I think each of them have their own journeys that they're going
Absolutely,
on. Obviously, like Miles is very much hung up in the Martin Lee stuff, but compared to the big flashy Craven and Venom stuff that is kind of at the forefront of a lot of the marketing on this one, but also like Peter does have that history as Spider-Man with these characters. Miles really only been Spider-Man for a year at this point because this is about a year after Miles Morales, so a year and a half or something. But I think part of that probably also depends on like who your predominantly playing as you're out in the world and stuff like that.
I think also Miles' stuff is mostly concerned with like Lee, and that takes the full game to resolve, versus Peter's kind of conflict with kind of like being checkpointed throughout the game. I think where Miles is a bit more like strung out.
Yeah.
I think Miles has a like phenomenal resolution though. I think him and like the themes around Miles being, do people deserve second chances?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you look at it's the Mysterio storyline, it's the Martin Lee storyline, it's like all these things.
Sandman. For me, it was Sandman.
Sandman as well. Yeah,
I did Sandman as Miles.
It really is just like, hey, do these people deserve second chances? And an affirmation about that. And I think that that's such a great moment where, you know, Martin Lee finds out who Miles is, and it leads to this poignant moment where Lee, it gives Lee an opportunity to make the right choices to help out Peter and Miles in their journey. And it's such a cool moment when Miles reveals who he really is to Martin Lee, and like telling him like, I'm not gonna kill you, like people deserve second chances, I'm giving you yours, like make good on it.
Like when Craven sets them to face off against one another.
Great moment. Also, just another shout out to the boss fights in this game. The boss fights in this game are top tier. Freaking love them. They're such a step up from the previous game where it felt like a lot of the sameness throughout the entire like fights kind of got long in the tooth. The different phases of like dropping their health bar, moving on to the next phase, and going throughout that, where like the Venom fight having like 4 or 5 different phases was just awesome and always felt fresh. I never felt like I was doing the same things over and over again.
Yeah.
Always keeping you on your toes in the fights. Shout out to the MJ Shriek fight, which was just awesome. Like so many great, awesome moments and fights in this game. Just so good.
Was it Shriek or Scream?
I think it might have been Scream, actually, now you say that.
Yeah.
Because I think Shriek is a different character.
Yeah. I think they're both.
I think they're both symbiotes.
Yeah. Symbiotes, yeah. But I think real quick on the Martin Lee stuff before I move into another Miles thought. I love that confrontation that the two of them have while they're in Peter's mind helping out.
Yeah.
Of like, I'm not going to forgive you. That I just don't have that in me, but I can't keep being mad at you about that. I have to let that go. I can't hate you anymore, kind of thing. Yeah, I love that as a very realistic thing of like, it's entirely realistic that an 18-year-old kid is not ever going to, or at least not, a year removed, going to forgive the man who killed his father.
Yeah, it really is. It's not just realistic, but it's like if you feel it, it's like
he's been struggling with this the entire game. And going back to like the breakout from the raft kind of thing, when he was borderline ready to just let Lee die, do a Christian Bale, I don't have to save you kind of thing. So I love that. I will say from the maybe Miles' story has less stakes or something like that. The game does put a lot of attention to Miles' procrastination on the essay. And I'm like, okay, like I get it. I get that is a very impactful thing to be doing as a high school senior, getting ready for college and all that stuff. But like that can't be just everything he's about. And so I did feel like we hit that beat a couple too many times.
I feel like there could have been more Brooklyn Vision stuff to kind of like flesh out his like senior year a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is like the idea that this whole game is supposed to take place over the course of a couple weeks, basically. It's always like a weird timing wise kind of scope of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, that I was like, okay, yeah, college essay, writer's block versus Venom and Craven the Hunter. Maybe those aren't the same.
This massive foundation where you're using like cutting edge science technology to
save the bees,
and save the planet. Yeah.
Heal the world. Yeah.
Heal the world. Yeah. Like Peter's side quest stuff, healing the world. Miles procrastinating his college essay. Like the juxtaposition is very clear. But I feel like I will say also, like, put this out there. Miles is, for lack, like, no pun intended, Miles better when it comes, like, I enjoy playing as Miles a lot more than I enjoy playing as Peter.
Okay.
In combat. Combat wise, I love the lightning abilities. I love the combo that you were able to do with the tools. Like the gadgets and whatnot, I feel like go so hand in hand with Miles's abilities. The symbiote stuff is fun, and I like that, but there's a good chunk of that game where you don't have that as Peter.
Yeah.
And I'm not as big of a fan
the
of
arms, the metal arms weren't as great.
They're not as great. They're fine. Like they're passable. Once you fully upgrade them, they're pretty good. But the immediate like benefit you get from the lightning abilities that Miles has, I think, is just leagues better than the spider arms. And then I think it equals out, especially when you get like the anti-venom stuff. The anti-venom bomb and whatnot to help you out with the symbiotes, I think is like that kind of makes it more equal footing.
Yeah.
But definitely
you get that so late in the game.
You get that so late in the game.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I think thematically it's totally cool. But yeah, there's a lot about that. I think Miles, combat wise, is just leagues better.
Yeah.
In the feel of it.
I was feeling so bad because I'd like leveled up the skills and stuff, and I'd pretty much maxed out Miles while I still had like half of Peter's stuff like was locked off, and I was like, all right, I'm guessing that's all going to be symbiote stuff or whatever. But it's just like you get it so late in the game that it felt odd. But yeah, I do think, and I think it's interesting, like that the first round of the symbiote stuff you get is the symbiote stuff, and then like you lose those powers for a couple missions, and then you get them back after the anti-venom stuff. And like a couple of them have like a slightly different flavor to them. But they're by and large the same kind of thing that you've had as Peter for the last little while. Yeah, I definitely think it was very backloaded for Peter's abilities, because for the majority of like open world stuff for the first half of the game, I was playing as Miles everywhere because the Venom stuff was just way better than the dinkly little like metal arms coming out of him and just pumping, punching enemies a few times or something like that. I was like, this just doesn't do it for me.
When you unlock the dash, the like, his mechanical arm dash, that ability, when you max it out, you can, like, any enemies that hit walls that you hit end up getting, like, webbed immediately, which is great. So it's good for, like, crowd control and stuff like that, but it just doesn't have the same impact as, like, dropping from the sky and just, like, punching the ground and throwing venom everywhere is great stuff, so.
Yeah. Another Spider-Man 3 teasy kind of thing I want to ask you about, especially because you might know more about the character than I do. But we get a tease at the end, seemingly the person that Rio has been dating is Albert Moon, and introduces Cindy Moon, aka Silk.
Yes.
As at the end of the game. It was not knowing that character at all, not knowing Albert and Cindy or anything like that. From just seeing the back of the character's head, I was like, is that the girl that Haley helped earlier with the graffiti stuff? No. So it wasn't until I did a little bit of digging after the fact to be like, oh, okay, that's like it's definitely set up in the way of like, oh, this is a tease for the next game, but it seems like they're going to go the Silk route instead of, a Spider-Gwen route or something like that.
Yeah. That is definitely what's happening here. I will say Albert Moon is not necessarily like that big of a character.
Yeah.
Silk's a massive character. She's also insanely popular. She's extremely popular within like the kind of like overall Spider-Man fan base.
She's another new one that came out around the same time as Miles, right?
Much later.
The last decade, within the last decade.
Within the last decade, she's within the last decade for sure. She's in the last like 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Silk is relatively new in that aspect. I think maybe 2015, maybe 2016 is her introduction. Trying to remember. But I will say like Silk is like, she's a cool character. She has a great design. She's not just Spider something. And she really has her own way and feel about her character that is very unique. Um, certainly doesn't hurt that she's a female BIPOC, so
Mm-hmm.
like that's great for the representation, as well as just bringing more nuanced storytelling. I'm not sure how they're going to tie it in, whether she'll be Silk in the next game or not. We'll see.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting thing to see. Like, is she already Silk and has been, hiding her powers and abilities and stuff, or is that a thing? Much like Miles got his powers at the end of the first game. Like, is she going to get powers at some point and be another playable character? Maybe Peter is going to be on an extended, hiatus, and we're not going to get like. Obviously, I think Spider-Man 3 will bring Peter back out of being Peter Parker, and he'll get back in the game. But because that's another thing, obviously, that this one kind of ends with is Miles basically being like, I can get things from here. I'll take care of stuff.
Yeah.
You go be Peter Parker for a while. So yeah, I'll be interested to see like what the big threat is, and obviously, I think Green Goblin being the like obvious front runner for what the big threat is. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if it's how far down the Silk rabbit hole they go with it, and whether or not it's just like, oh, here's the character. Fans of the series, know who she is and what she can become, kind of thing. But like, will they actually play with that? I imagine they will, because I think Insomniac's been having a lot of fun with kind of telling their version of some of these stories. But yeah. Speaking of, what did you think of the Haley sequence?
I really enjoyed the Haley sequence.
Yeah.
Her mission is very fun. Haley as a character, I'm quite fond of. She's a really fantastic addition. She adds a dynamic where, just in the presentation of the game, where she is, like she's deaf, and so all of her stuff is subtitled, and there's no dialogue to go along with it.
Mm-hmm.
I also appreciate how different people have different levels of sign language, like ESL levels of skill. Miles's mom clearly has a rougher time at the end of the game where she's able to convey it properly, but you can tell.
Given that she doesn't interact with Haley on a daily basis,
Absolutely,
I think she's got a good I think she's got a good grasp on sign language. But yeah, like even like from the jump, I love that her classroom has an ASL
person
interpreter kind of in the room. I love how Miles gets calls that are text to speech calls from Haley over the course of the game. Plus, those times where we do just kind of have like text messages back and forth. Or I don't know. Did you catch the Danicast? It was probably around the time of the
where Genki is her interpreter.
Where Genki is her interpreter. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. So yeah, like even there, I love to what you were talking about. I love the scenes where they're talking and they're doing the sign language, and we're it's subtitled for us, the audience. But they're having the conversations straight with her. I will say I wanted more of Haley in this. I think that's another area where I think like Miles's kind of story pulled him so far away from his community at points that like including like not seeing her gallery kind of thing, and not like, and it's like, you were right there at Coney Island, man. You should have gone and supported her.
Yep.
Like, it's weird that you didn't. And I get that like they needed to write him out so that Harry and Peter could have that big moment kind of thing, but still, it's like I feel like you could have opened that with them all at her exhibit at Coney Island thing, and then go into the Mysterium stuff, and then kind of write him out of it. So there were some weird choices there that I wanted more of the two of them together. Really, is I think what it comes down to. At the end of the day.
Absolutely.
And it's nice that we kind of get the date kind of at the end, and I love the like. Before going off to the big Venom battle overall kind of thing, he, says, I think you like me. I like you. like, and she, plays hard to get and kind of does the whole like,
Oh yeah.
we'll see if I'm free kind of thing. But yeah, like I just like the two of them together, so I was sad that we didn't get more of the two of them together, I would say.
That's fair. I feel the same way about like more Genki. I could have done with more Genki,
Mhm.
like more Genki Miles hangout stuff. Because
Yeah,
I
I guess.
really missed that from Miles Morales.
Yeah, I think that's probably what it is like Miles spends so much time with Peter, but we get Peter spending time with MJ and Harry more so than I think we get Miles spending time with Genki and Haley. It's probably what really the breakdown in kind of ratios there comes down to. So you finally played them today, and I've been waiting for you to play them for a while. The Grandpa mission and the Howard mission, in particular. You played them. You did them in the reverse order from what I did, like because
Yes.
I walked by at one point and I saw you flying with pigeons. I was like, he's finally doing the Howard thing, yeah.
Yes.
And then after that, I walked back by and you were like, I'm going to do the Grandpa thing now. And I was like, that's a weird order for those to have been done. But what did you think of those? Did I hype them up too much for you, or were they?
No, I think they were appropriate. Like I enjoy the low key, low scale that these missions are. That they are more about just like the neighborhood,
your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Yeah, just your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man stuff. Haley, just kind of like her stuff was fun. But I think that the Howard one was definitely about pulling your heartstrings. Howard's this character they introduced in the first game, where you're just catching his pigeons, and Miles Morales, you kind of like pick up and be like, oh yeah, because you get you get those fun like pigeon facts from Peter.
Yeah.
And then it kind of like it comes to this where it's like, yeah, hey, and then you get like his backstory, and you're like, yeah, okay, I'll go find you. I'm like, what's happened with this guy? Is he gonna like walk off the pier? And it's like, no, he just knew his time was there. His time was there, and it was time for him to like it was over. And it's like that's hearts, like that pulls at your heartstrings. It's really, really good. The Grandpa in the Park one.
Real quick, just on the Howard one. Like it was a beautiful, for me, like a tie back to Peter being a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man in the first game. Yeah, and like that being one of the, it was a pigeon collectible basically, but it was it's the fact that like it's Dave Fennoy, so he's like a recognizable voice, and is imbuing a lot of heart, and the idea of like Spider-Man looking out for the people that society doesn't look out for, the unhoused kind of situation that Howard was in. I love kind of being able to check in on that and share this nice, especially for me because it had been kind of set up as the Grandpa sequence with Miles as like the counterpoint. I liked that like Peter got that nice hanging out on a bench talking to somebody that he's helping out, getting Howard's story and kind of like looking over at the factory that he used to work at, looking at the boats on the I don't know, probably not the Hudson, but I'm going to say the Hudson. And then like looking at the Statue of Liberty and stuff like that. And then, yeah, just the like sending you off to Astoria, basically far corner of the map. So you get to just kind of do a nice peaceful swing across the city at golden hour, because that's the the lighting thing that they've set that mission at and all that stuff. Just like so serene and peaceful and beautiful that like knowing storytelling as I do, I could see where it was going. And so I started tearing up as I'm, approaching, the neighborhoods and being like, I'm going to go back and he's not going to be there anymore. This was a goodbye to Howard, and that's sad. And then, yeah, it basically culminates in that. That's, that is, I think, the one time in the game that I teared up. And it was just like a nice, beautiful sequence kind of firing on all cylinders. So yeah, then over to the Grandpa story.
Yep. The Grandpa story, I don't have much to say about it. It was nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, I think the Grandpa, especially doing the Grandpa story first, set the tone for nice, quieter Spider-Man moments. And it felt especially doing it before all of the Harlem music stuff. It felt like Miles being there for his community, helping out this grandpa. Obviously, I still have probably fresher wounds on Alzheimer's and stuff like that.
Yeah.
From my grandmother from a couple years back. So like him just needing somebody to kind of reminisce with and kind of live in the past with for a bit was just a nice, beautiful moment. And it very much was, as I kind of alluded to last week when I talked about this in spoiler free sense, like, yeah, the bombastic Sandman opening and stuff, really cool, really like when the game is doing its big set pieces, awesome, but also when it executes on these quieter moments with just as much care and precision, I think that's what makes this a special game and Insomniac a special studio. I think is that it didn't need those side quests, and I will say, pulling from the Kind of Funny Spoilercast, Brian Intihar talked about the Howard quest was basically created at the end, like as a game jam kind of project. Like they in Insomniac did like a game jam for a weekend kind of thing, and somebody created that level or that mission in like 3 days. And everybody's like, well, yeah, that's going in the game. That's amazing. And that's in particular kind of Brian Intihar tells the story of like that developer cared about making that, so that right. In the same way that, a whole bunch of them care about the big, crazy, bombastic supervillain fights and stuff like that. So, yeah, I really like those, and they stood out to me, as a great change of pace for, and I like that both Miles and Peter got one a piece.
Yep. I want to also say, like, put on to that is I like that there's a difference between crime alerts and stopping crime and these side missions. These side missions are not about, in Miles Morales, they are kind of introduced to kind of give you like a side quest that ends up with you taking down Fisk, from afar. But in this time, they're just about the neighborhood. They're just about the people in the neighborhood. They're just about the people that you care about, that you know, or even people you don't know. And it's all about that. You get that really awesome one of Peter where he like reminisces about like the first day he meets J. Jonah Jameson and gives him his photo.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the iconic like Spider-Man issue 4, whatever it is, photo.
Yeah, like because it wasn't even Spider-Man. It's like Amazing Fantasy number 4 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just it's done so well. It's so much fun. And also introduces like J. Jonah Jameson, always been the worst. Always been the worst, but we love him anyway.
Yeah.
You haven't helped. Like, I just don't like. Nobody should love J. Jonah Jameson as a character, but we all do.
He's such a fun send up of that. I think especially what these games have done of, and this one did, I think, less. And maybe it's also because we also saw hit in this kind of format in No Way Home now. But like, I loved in 2018, J. Jonah Jameson be like in the Daily Bugle podcast being like a conspiracy theory kind of like him being like an Alex Jones kind of thing. I think maybe there's an element of the Alex Joneses and the Tucker Carlsons of the world have too much power, and so they aren't as funny to watch them be, parodied anymore.
That's fair. That's actually pretty fair. Yeah.
But yeah, in the same way that like, oh, I liked House of Cards the first couple seasons, but then when Trump took the White House, I did not like House of Cards anymore.
That's fair.
And that was before all the Kevin Spacey shit. But yeah, I think that's kind of an aspect of that. And so I like that the Danicast also makes its way into this.
Yep. Also,
kind of that counter, but also like the beginning of the game. I think I say in my hour-long playthrough doing, like, when you pull him out of the limo, it's like, of course it's going to be J. Jonah Jameson. Of course he's the guy you have to save.
Of course, so you save him, and he's like,
and he's immediately pissed off.
Yeah, he's immediately pissed off
out
that it's you guys saving him. Yeah. It's so good. It's such a great choice. But I think it's also just I think it was interesting that originally he bought back the Daily Bugle Because originally he sold it. That was kind of the whole thing. Was like in the beginning, he's like, I run a podcast because I had to sell my paper because, because the woke media people like ousted me, and that was the whole thing about that. And then it turns out that he bought it back again, and he's now the new owner, and it leads to the whole MJ stuff. And I want to specify this because MJ fucking rocks in this game.
Mm-hmm.
She's not just doing these like kind of like pseudo like whatever stealth missions like they were the last game. Like they were fine. I never had a problem with them. Yeah. It was just kind of like out of nowhere you had to do like a random stealth element to the game.
Yeah, I mean they were a deliberate change of pace in the first game.
Which is fine. I think the ones with Miles, especially when Rhino's rampaging through the camp there, that one was more interesting in the first game. Followed it up this time around. Freaking love playing as MJ. MJ's great in this game, especially. She's
got the one-shot stun Symkaria blaster.
Yeah, she's got the Symkaria blaster. She's been trained by Silver Sable. Mm-hmm. She's ready to go, and she like over time also upgrades her taser pistol, puts a web slinger on there, great, and then a sonic blaster. Peter adjusts it to have a sonic blast on it. Freaking awesome.
Yeah.
So good. Like, and what I loved about it was I was like kind of like pot shotting people, the symbiotes at the end of the game with the sonic blaster. Mm-hmm. And then I realized if you headshot them, it's a one shot.
There you go. Nice.
Yeah. If you can aim it correctly, especially for the ones that charge at you, if you aim it right, just boom, takes them right out. I'm like, that's so overpowered, but so awesome because I don't want to deal with this.
I mean, yeah, it's overpowered because she's underpowered.
Yeah.
Like 2 hits and she's down.
Absolutely. It's just a great balanced way of doing it. And just those are fun investigative moments where you get to further in. It's like, yeah, Peter was a photographer. He wasn't a journalist. And RMJ is a journalist. That is like, Peter loves her because of who she is as a person and who she is as a journalist. In this version of the universe. And I freaking love that. I liked it in the first game. I love it in this game. I love their relationship as it kind of, he goes, hey, you should move in with me. Mm-hmm. And she's like, no.
I need to be in the city.
I need to be in the city. I need to do this. And at the very end, it's just kind of like hey, we just went through this really awful thing. The only thing we care about is each other. And she's like, I'm going to move in.
Yeah. I'm going to do a podcast now. I don't need to be in the city, like when in the beat where the thing happens. I'll be fine. I'll have the conversations with the people after the fact. I don't need to be first on the scene.
Yeah, because she was trying to fulfill this idea of what she thought she needed to be as a journalist and as a reporter. And what it ended up, and what she ended up learning is she doesn't actually want that. There's an expectation of that, which leads directly into her symbiote fight as Scream is so damn good because it really drags everything that's rough in their relationship right to the surface. Mm-hmm. And this is also post-symbiote clarity that Peter has, where he's far more aware of the problems that he's been putting in, even outside of the symbiote stuff, just the problems that he brings to his relationships with people, and is much more conscientious of that, and is okay addressing that. And him breaking through to her during that entire thing, that entire fight is excellent. You're fighting through the neighborhood, which is awesome. Mm-hmm. Leads to those really great moments where like they reaffirm their love and care for each other in the rain. And during this time, I had the black and gold suit on, which means like exposed wiring. And so I was constantly felt distracted by like Peter's like mask having like exposed wires on it. And the entire time I'm looking, I'm like, I should have really changed my outfit before I came to this fight. I did not realize we were going to be fighting in the rain. I'm like, this outfit, I love I love the black and gold, but this is just a hazard.
Yeah, it's an interesting, that in and of itself is an interesting conversation point. I definitely found myself as Peter, when I was playing as Peter, none of his suits jumped out at me enough to be like, oh, I want to be playing in that suit. So I largely kept him in like whatever suit was making the most sense in terms of where they were at in the story. So like, most of the first chunk of the game, he's just wearing his, upgraded to or advanced suit 2.0 or whatever with the white spider. And then when he turned into symbiote, I was wearing that suit. And then I kind of kept the anti-venom suit kind of on after that. Whereas Miles, I loved a lot of his suits, and so I was like kind of juggling through a lot of his stuff. Once the end of the Spider-Verse suits and Across the Spider-Verse suits came along, I mostly probably kept with those. But then his Endgame suit came out, and I was like, that is dope as fuck, and I just rocked that the whole like last chunk of the game. I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
the whole like, yeah, I'm not trying to do your thing. I figured it was time for like a Miles special kind of thing.
A Miles
Like,
original,
yeah.
It was great. It just feeds into his unique style.
Yeah.
That I feel like I will say I love that suit. I found myself really liking both hooded suits. So there was the Scarlet Cowl suits.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, the Scarlet Cowl 2 suits. They both have a set of those, and I really like those. However, and this is something I loved in Miles Morales as well. I love the Miles Morales 2099 suit. And there is also shout out to them doing the color variations this time instead of it just being like unlock the different colors as different outfits. It's like, nope, you unlock the outfit and then you unlock the color variants. Yeah. And I love that it's just a simple parts upgrade. You don't have to get they don't get crazy about it.
That reminds me, did you so one of the variant suits obviously is a Wakanda inspired Black Panther suit, as well as a Wolverine inspired suit for obviously their next big game from Insomniac. Did you find the little Wakandan embassy Easter egg?
I did, yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yep, there was that. There's a lot that I like that game.
For anybody listening that doesn't know, if you go to the Wakandan embassy as Miles, you can basically do a prompt and it'll do the Wakanda Forever salute.
Yep, it's a big
in honor of Chadwick Boseman kind of vibes.
Yep. I really enjoyed a lot of Miles's outfits, but I found myself really liking both characters, liking the hooded stuff. I think that as soon as I unlocked the symbiote suit, I never wanted to not use it because I love the black webs. And when I unlocked the Spider-Man 3 outfit, the black outfit, I was like, cool. I really like the tech because I don't like the kind of membraney texture of the symbiote suit.
Mm-hmm.
But I really like the kind of like textured black suit from Spider-Man 3. But then the webs are white, and I'm like, doesn't fit. So went back to the symbiote suit, and that's kind of where I stayed at for that last chunk of the game. But for the earlier parts of the game, I rocked a lot of the Spider-Punk stuff for Peter.
Yeah,
obviously, because I'm a massive Spider-Punk fan. So loved the Spider-Punk outfit. I chose the variant though because he didn't I just don't like the use of how they make the blue jeans look on him. So I went with the black ones because they felt like they had the color fit better with the texture of jeans. The jean pants that the Spider-Punk outfit has, but also I like the black shoes. Great outfit. Love that outfit to death. Even before I was a big Spider-Punk fan. I thought that I was already a Spider-Punk fan by the time the Spider-Punk outfit was available in 2018 Spider-Man, but I just love that outfit. It's so cool. It's great. And then on top of that, kind of like finding by the end of the game, I kind of wanted them to more match.
Mm-hmm.
And so I unlocked the Mysterio suit and had the white variant of the Mysterio suit.
Okay. That
in combination with the Anti-Venom suit, they both have kind of like a creamy white, almost like mother of pearl type coloration and effect on it, where it's more reflective. It's almost like almost carapace like. Both outfits had that going for them, and I like that. I like the Anti-Venom suit versus the symbiote suit because it's less weird webby membrane, like weird membraney stuff, and like that texture that just bothers me.
Mm-hmm.
And the white outfit was more of almost like a hardened carapace shell on him, and I like the reflective nature of that. It's almost iridescent.
Yeah. In this conversation, one of the things I did want to touch on, similar to I missed the Easter eggy kind of things. I did miss that I liked that in the last game, each suit had its own different ability.
I missed that. Yes.
I missed that. I didn't like that like they were purely cosmetic this time around.
They do add something of a flair to it, especially in the Spider-Man 1 where your finisher ability was dependent upon like which suit you were using.
But you could swap them.
And you could swap them out, but I loved the idea of unlocking different finishers with the new outfits.
Yeah.
And I did miss that this time around for sure.
Yeah.
Because there was also just like not a lot of variance to finishers. It always felt like it was pretty much the same finisher over and over again.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate because the Spider-Punk finisher from Spider-Man 1 was awesome as hell. So.
I mean, yeah, because it was like finishers in this game were replaced by like the rage mode or whatever it was.
Yeah.
The L3 and R3 kind of power boost / quick recharge or whatever. Versus like in 2018, I remember I don't remember which suit it was tied to, but basically once I unlocked it, it was what I used the whole rest of the game, and it was basically like you drop a web that exploded and like shot web out, everywhere, and like would get a whole bunch of the mini grunts just like immediately tied up against the walls and stuff like that. I missed having that as like a nice easy go-to.
I missed the Iron Spider one where you basically like throw out your like the spider legs and you just like annihilate everyone around you in like like almost tornado effect or a spin effect, where you just wipe out everybody in a circle around you. I missed that one. I miss a lot of them. The cool finishers from the first game.
Yeah.
Missing those. I do like the team up finishers you get when you're doing combos with Miles and whatnot, or when you're playing as Miles and teaming with Peter. Those are a lot of fun, but not nearly as varied and impactful, I think, as a lot of the finishers from the previous game.
Yeah.
I could have done finishers instead of like rage mode / like quick like enemy wipe with Miles.
Yeah. Other thing to touch on, did you end up finishing all of the spider bots? Collecting all the spider bots?
No, so I'm missing the spider bots and I haven't finished the symbiote stuff yet.
Okay. Well, I don't want to spoil the spider bots end bit then, so I won't. But
is it worth it? Because so far it's like I got to the point where Genki reveals that they're using the same frequency as the like spider team uses.
I don't know. Like ultimately, it is probably the least like story of the side quest things, but I really liked it. Especially like from a visual standpoint, you get kind of a little coda thing that immediately I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then I was confused because it's a thing I didn't really understand, but then like looking it up online, I was like, oh, that's really cool again. So I really liked it. But it also is like that seems like it's probably just going to be a one-off thing, as opposed to like a tease for something that could be in Spider-Man 3. Maybe they'll surprise me, but yeah, I can talk to you about it after the fact, but I don't want to spoil it for you here in the moment. I will say the interesting thing of those is like they're seeing a lot of suits that
don't fit
Peter doesn't really know about or shouldn't know about or anything like that. Like a lot of the templates and stuff like that. And admittedly, like that has a little bit less bearing if you're running around with like a Spider-Man 2099 suit on Peter in general, because he wouldn't have a clue where this comes from, kind of thing. But like, yeah, the like finding a Spider-Gwen bot or something like that is like, I don't know what this is supposed to be a reference to. Is like realistically how Peter would react to it. I will say, in that note, I like that, and I'm curious, because I didn't get to really explore, but I like that Peter and Miles, for so many of these things, have their own unique dialogue interacting with certain things, depending on if you're out in the world finding them as Miles or finding them as Peter. So I think that's a cool thing. The writer is doing an extra set of dialogue for a lot of those elements. So yeah, I liked the spider bots kind of culmination reveal, but I think knowing me, it also speaks very directly to me. as like an interesting aspect of potential, but it again, I think falls short of what the backpacks did. I think the backpacks were a much more interesting thing, even if they didn't have like a, culmination overall, end of the collection quest beat or anything like that. And then you said the symbiote nest stuff you haven't done. Yeah, those, I don't think those had anything in particular. Like, I think you'll get another suit.
Yeah, I already know about the other suit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Anything else we want to touch on?
no, I think we're good. I don't think there's anything that jumps out to me that like definitely needs to be covered in our spoiler cast. I think we basically covered it.
Yeah, I mean, just a last little beat that you and I touched on a little bit is I think I really like that so much of this game is themed around rehabilitation.
Yes.
For so many of the villains and stuff like that.
The fact that Peter is haunted by, when you go into his mind, Peter's haunted by
the raft,
the
existence of the raft,
the existence of the raft, the existence of prison, and like the question of like the people you send in, and like kind of like the complexity of when you've been doing this as long as Peter has, and you keep sending people back to prison, and they keep breaking out, like they keep getting these second chances, and they keep messing up in some way or another. I mean, granted, I guess if you break out of prison, you're not really going for a second chance.
Yeah.
You're not really seeking a rehabilitation.
But yeah, so like Tombstone or Quentin Beck in this game.
Yeah.
Sandman, who had until the opening of this game had been kind of out of the game for a number of years.
Yep. Not only that, but like Peter, like there's talks about like, hey, what can we do to help Marco? Because like he was literally like they forced him to become Super Sandman.
Yeah. Much like, and obviously we get the lizard stuff later in the game, where Connor's, who has been benefiting from a second chance kind of thing, out there being forced, back into his evil villainous alter ego kind of stuff.
And even then his villainous alter ego is doing its best to stay away from people. Mm-hmm. And it isn't until he loses control over it, because he doesn't make it back to his lab in time before he loses control over it, that he goes wild. And even then he's hunting food and not attacking people. Like he's not out there like attacking the populace. So even then it's like, this is still trying to, and also like, what's that when he finally gets away from Spider-Man? Does he go on an evil rampage? No, he goes back into the sewer to try to hide. Mm-hmm. Like there's definitely something going on. Like I do enjoy that there is such a fascinating discussion about, hey, what is justice? Like the idea of Wraith and Spider-Man story throughout the Flame cult is all about that. Like how far is too far? And that comes up in a way that's never overhanded. It's never heavy-handed. It never hits you over the head with it. It's always just like, hey, this is a theme that we are talking about and we are exploring. We're not going to lecture you on, are you the good guy or the bad guy, yada, 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 like a lot of other mediums do. We're going to discuss this with the nuances of how does Miles, an 18-year-old who now has superpowers, who can, like, he may not be killing Lee, but is he leaving Lee to die? Is it like it brings up these bigger questions of those shades of gray and morality of where people are at in it. And I think that they explore it so well, and it does such a great job. And then getting to see Tombstone, who is kind of like, is it the most glamorous of lifestyles? No, but he's working go-karts. Like he's fixing go-karts, and he saves a dude's life when one of the go-karts like flips in a really dangerous situation.
Yeah. Also, like the fact that a go-kart can flip like that, Coney Island has some problems.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I've never been to Coney Island, but I don't doubt it. Cause like, honestly, let's be real. If you're fair, like if you go to like one of those like county fairs, it's like the chances of like, you get on a roller coaster that was constructed overnight, you have a problem.
I mean, I didn't watch it. I don't really watch it that much, but the comedian on SNL this week in his like stand up, in his like opening monologue, was talking about, I used to go to like I'm from Tennessee. I went to, state fairs and stuff, and those are wild. I don't think the government knows about them because, you're going on a ride that an hour ago was on the interstate. So yeah, it's that kind of vibe. And the image I see, probably because I'm like super, like all of my, I don't have a For You page because I don't do TikTok, but like my Instagram reel very regularly will show this like ride that was like one of those kind of like spinning, swooping things that will like do flips and stuff.
Yeah.
And like it was so top heavy that like you see it gets to the top and like it starts to like tip back and people start noticing it, and like a crowd rushes in to act as a counterbalance for the thing until it can kind of like settle back down.
Yep.
And it's like, yeah, that's wild. The safety standards on that kind of stuff. But yeah,
Coney Island. You want to Sky School, and guys almost toppled over. So.
Lots of good like rehabilitation beats and moments over the course of this game that I appreciated.
Which is great because in the Miles Morales game, there is literally, if you listen to the criminals, they are like, they're so over the top evil. Mm-hmm. It's comedic, but at the same time, it's like, that's not realistic. This time around, it's like the hunters are like emphatic and like indoctrinated into this hunting mindset. The other criminals are like, whatever, it's fine. But I think the idea of like, people.
I mean, like the gun running bank robbers in this game are like the first hour of this game, and then you get hunters and you get flame cultists that are like, oh, that's the crime that you're dealing with the rest of the game.
Yeah, you're dealing with like serious, actual like nefarious shit rather than just like the third most or like the fifth best mafia in New York City.
Yeah. I did like the way the map changed over the course of the game. In particular, like how it would reflect moments. Oh, we definitely have to talk about the strange stuff in the Black Cat.
Oh yeah, the strange stuff in the Black Cat stuff was awesome.
All the Sanctorum.
The Sanctorum is great. They have the Sanctorum. Black Cat steals an artifact. There's teleporting and everything. Miles is just like, magic is real and it's scary. And I'm like, that's great.
Yeah.
There's that. Also, I forgot to even bring up, like, if you are going to be like, hey, we're going to do a symbiote game, we're going to do like the Venom stuff. What a great way to tie in all of like the top tier symbiote Venom story stuff over the years, whether it's like Symbiote NYC, which was a thing where like there's been a couple different iterations of it, but like the idea of basically like New York taken over by symbiotes is a fun thing. They do a lot of like really great, bring in a lot of great comic book elements of all the best symbiote storylines. We got Scream, who is part of an offshoot similar to Carnage of symbiote, like alternative symbiotes. So we got a little bit of that. We got the tease of Carnage. They didn't waste Carnage here as a villain by having him just be an addendum to Venom, which I think is great. There's just a lot of really awesome stuff here. Also, I just realized if Harry's alive, he still has the Venom symbiote still in him. Technically.
I mean, he's still like they pull it out of him, so he's probably still got a little bit.
The traces like Peter has.
Like Peter has.
That's what I was referring to. So like, there's a good chance we could probably see like Harry wakes up, we could see that. It's cool. They leave a lot of doors open for a lot of these characters and a lot of ways that these storylines can go, and I'm very excited about that. But yeah, the NYC being taken over by the symbiotes. Awesome, especially towards the end game where like symbiotes are just all over the place, and so when you're trying to like traverse through the city, you're getting like sniped by symbiotes just hanging out in the streets.
Yeah,
because basically they made you feel like, oh, this is now Venom's base.
Yeah. Even earlier in the game though, like I like obviously in the aftermath of the opening, there's sand everywhere. But even like late game, you still go down to like the financial district and there's piles of sand still in front of a whole lot of buildings. There was one time like midway through the game, I kept like flying around. I was doing a whole bunch of like clearing out neighborhoods and stuff, clearing out districts, doing a whole bunch of the side stuff, and I kept seeing this like giant plume of smoke. I'm like, oh, there's got to be something there. What's that? And I like it took me a while to realize, oh, that was the aftermath of the Tombstone stuff. I was in like that chunk of the game, and that the foundry was just black smoke, filling Brooklyn or whatever it was.
Yep.
Um,
Great stuff, man. It's
so
great
yeah,
stuff.
I liked how the map changed over the run of the game, as it did in the first one too as well. But like I guess it was less like the first one. It was like, oh, I'm clearly seeing them like lay down all the Sable camps and Sable checkpoints and stuff like that. Less of that this time around, replaced by symbiotes all over the place. But yeah, really enjoyed that. Did you do the Fido quest?
Yes.
Yeah.
Loved Fido. Fido was awesome.
Okay.
I did all the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man stuff, so that's
Gotcha.
one of them.
Okay. Yeah. It was one of those like when you mentioned the lizard going out there and like was only hunting for food, the immediate thought that I had was like, oh yeah, there was that mission where you're like tracking from this lady's garden. I was like, oh, that wasn't a lizard thing, that was the mechanical dog thing. I was like, oh, that's a fun like way to
You rescue one of the robo dogs.
Yeah,
it's so cute, and he's so the color like the rainbow dragon that he gets on the side of him later. It's so fun.
Yeah.
It's things like that. I was like, am I going to get a pet? And it's like, oh no, this lady has really bad allergies, so she doesn't have a seeing eye dog or a seeing like an animal to aid her. And now she does, and she doesn't have to worry about her allergies because it's metal, and she's blind, so she doesn't have to be scared by the fact that it is freaky as hell.
Mm-hmm. I do want to shout out what's the actor's name? Nashir Dalal, who when I was doing the Quentin Beck stuff, I was like, I feel like that's the same guy. He's had a pretty big year because he was also in Bodhi in Jedi Survivor. And then he's also in he's a handful of people in Starfield that he definitely jumped out at there. But yeah, shout out to him having a big old good year in games and doing his thing. Because yeah, like there were a couple things where I was like, that even just looks like Bodhi's design.
Yep, it does.
And sure enough, it's like, oh yep, that's the same actor. So yeah. Anything else? Oh yeah, and I say big year in games, but that's because I also replayed Horizon Forbidden West, where he's Katalo earlier this year. So that was last year, but yes, a good year for
he's great.
Actor. And I mean, performances all around were very good in this game. So no gripes, no complaints there. Yeah, just lots of good stuff, and I look forward to Spider-Man 3. I'll be curious if they do DLC on this. Like I'm not expecting anything, but DLC in terms of like more gameplay stuff. Like I wouldn't be surprised if, like they did with the last game, they kind of pepper in new suits here and there. Although they did get like a lot of the probably most requested ones already out the gate on this one with all the movie stuff. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what, if anything, this game. I know, like, I think New Game Plus is like the big thing that they're currently working on. So yeah, we'll see what else they have in store. But if not, I can't wait to see what they do with Wolverine next, because Insomniac just doing the dang thing.
They're doing the dang thing, and I love the universe they're establishing. I'm really excited for Wolverine because I think that leads into X-Men stuff. They've been teasing Avengers since the first game with Avengers Tower.
Yeah, I mean, I don't imagine there's anything in the cards because
right now, no, I don't think so.
Because of like it like that all comes down to licensing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they can use the Avengers logo, and I will say, even like it having the Avengers Tower in this game feels weird, because it definitely is like, well, this is definitely an Avengers level threat, and
it's true.
and we don't even get any kind of line about where are they this time around. Whereas at least in 2018 we got like they I think they're out in the West Coast right now. So yeah, like the fact that just the biggest tower in Manhattan is Avengers Tower, and they're nowhere to be found. It feels weird. But they did come out and say and confirm that this and Wolverine exist in the same, Insomniac verse. of Marvel stuff. And given that the Avengers game has clearly fallen by the wayside and is no more, maybe they'll get the license to throw in some Avengers cameos here and there. But at the same time, it's like, okay, how like what is that, like that fine line of keeping this a Spider-Man game while also appreciating the larger universe
Absolutely,
at hand.
And I'm curious. I think X-Men's a great touch in for that, but I think just focusing on Wolverine is the best option for them.
So I will say, like, like just in exploring the game, I explored and found the mansion stuff that you do. Either, I don't remember if it was Craven stuff or if it was Flame stuff, but like I found that like at the northmost part of the map, like well before I did any of those things, and I was like, is this like a super rundown Xavier School for Gifted Children kind of thing?
Yeah, that's the Flame one. Yeah, because it straight up looks like that's supposed to be like the X Mansion. Yeah,
it looked like the X Mansion. And it was like, so when I came back to it later, I was like, oh, okay, here's like it was clearly a thing of like, this is going to be in the game at some point because that's way too specifically designed for it to not be. But yeah, it was a weird like thing to uncover beforehand. One last thing I will mention that I did you could do this in the first game too, but I would occasionally, if I was over in that neck of the woods, I would pop by the graveyard.
Absolutely.
And if I was playing as Peter, I'd swing by May and Ben's grave, or if I was playing as Miles, I'd swing by his dad's grave. And you can also find there isn't like a prompt or anything, but there's also like a grave for Finn and Rick Mason from Miles Morales. And I did it a couple times over the course of the game, and I appreciated like the dialogue would like update based on like what the character had been doing and like what had just happened in the story kind of stuff. So it was like a nice little like, I wonder how many of those exist over the course of the game of like, I'm checking in, I'm telling you, hey Dad, I hope you'd be proud. I'm trying to help Sandman or something like that. Cool little stuff. Cool little, there for the small fraction of people who find them kind of moments. And I did appreciate also that Miles will have something to say if you go over to May's grave, because obviously he knew her as well. So yeah, shout out to all that stuff. Good game is good. All right. Unless you have anything else. Oh, I guess I think we talked about it a little bit in the last one. But shout out to obviously our friends over at Kind of Funny, just straight up being in the game.
That was awesome. Yeah,
Greg and
I
Blessing.
Can't share the one I initially took. So
sure, yeah. And I that was another thing. Like, while I appreciate it in the first game, it was like here are all of our landmarks, and here's like a cool little Marvel Easter egg at so many of these things. The decision instead to do that, and specifically for it to be like Robbie is doing this, and it is like the people of the city, that's what makes New York kind of thing. It's like, okay, that's a cool thing.
Also, I love that it's Robbie is not working for Jonah. He runs his own outlet.
Yeah,
I'm like, that's cool. Like, yeah, no, like, once again, creating like a internal universe and world building with the character of like, yeah, when Peter was starting out, Robbie worked for J. Jonah, but now Robbie works for himself. Like Robbie runs his own outlet, and it makes so much sense. It's great progression and gives you gives Pete a way to make some side cash.
Yeah. If you were like me and sat through the credits and were like, that's weird that Alan Tudyk and Nathan Fillion are in here as like additional voices.
Oh, they're the
mascots. Yeah,
I picked that up immediately when I saw them.
Nice.
I was like,
I wasn't listening too closely to like their voices or anything like that. I was just enjoying like the fact that they were having banter and that there was this like mascot off kind of thing. But yes, shout out to the weird little cameos in this game. Also, just a very minimal thing for me. There's a guy I know through like Phoenix community and stuff. His name's David Arrigo Jr. He was in Spamalot a number of years ago when Phoenix Theater did that. That's probably the closest I was to like. And he was also like Roger in in one of the rents I've seen, stuff like that. But yeah, so his name popped up as an additional voice, and I was like, hey, that's a name I know. That is a person I'm like 2 degrees away from, or a degree away from. So yeah, it was a cool shout out to him. No idea, what voices, what additional voices, but yeah. Cool. All right. Well, I think that is going to do it for this episode.
Yeah, I can't think of anything else. I was looking over stuff, and I'm like, I can't think of anything else to talk about.
Yeah, we hit all the bullet points on my list. So, all good stuff. Well, thank you for joining me, Cam, to talk Spider-Man 2. Glad you were able to get it finished in time for this episode, so we can just knock this out and do full-blown spoiler cast on it. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot, 2 B's, 2 T's. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
Yeah, I want to give a massive shout out to we've wrapped up our month of October, our Halloween section of the year for that D Plus show. We've had some really fun episodes, so go check that out. Most recently, we did Treehouse of Horror. I always want to say Treehouse of Terror for some reason.
Yeah, they didn't get the alliteration memo.
Yeah, Treehouse of Horror episodes 7, 8, and 9 this time around. So go check that out. We had a great blast talking about that, and has one of my all-time favorite moments in Simpsons history overall. So great one-liners in there. So go check that out. We go in depth on those episodes and have a lot of fun with them. So that's my shout out.
Cool. Yeah, you can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. In addition to that, I will shout out this coming week, we're planning on doing Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, kind of playing some catch-up since we didn't do that, when it originally came out over the summer. So if you liked our spoiler cast on it months and months ago, go catch that D Plus show on it this coming week. But also check out, we're in Act 3 now of Baldur's Gate 3. So go check that out Tuesdays and Thursdays on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/thatnerdysite. Sadly, as I alluded to last week, I've reached basically a game-breaking bug in my current run of that game. So when I get back to recording episodes of the Baldur's Gate Let's Play, I now know things I need to avoid so I don't end up coming across the game-breaking bug in that playthrough as well. So, hey. So yes, go check out all that fun stuff. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site, or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. Once again, if you like what you heard, please rate, review, like, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Thank you for listening. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, and thwip thwip.